So this is our first podcast. We're starting this just to talk about things and get the community a little more dialogue about what's been happening in Lionhearts, and then just things Lionhearts based, like talking about like topics, things that Lionhearts can improve on and such. We'll also be bringing people on after this. So yeah, let's just get started. Let's get right into it.
Yeah. What's up, guys? I'm also here.
Yep.
Glad to be talking about all of these important topics. And let's just get right into it, Valor.
Yep. And obviously you guys know who this is. This is Mr. Leozan Gallant himself in the flesh. How you doing?
So true. I'm good, man. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here today and be talking about the geopolitical landscape.
Yeah, not the geological landscape.
Yeah, not the geological landscape, some people say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, how about we just get right into it,
Yeah.
We've got a pretty interesting week which has preceded us so far.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about let's go for the KOE, since it involves Antioch. Let's go for KOE with Abba and Antioch. What do you think about that? How do you think that's gonna go down, given the last two RBs have been stalemate?
Yeah, so you guys are helping Abbasids, am I correct?
Yeah, we allied Abbasids either yesterday or the day before. I believe, well, Fops came to us and asked us about it, and I talked to my council and they all wanted to, so I just went ahead with it.
Nice. Yeah, no, so I've heard that they're not putting up too much of a resistance. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the English thing is an official war at the moment, is it?
No, it's not. They didn't declare on each other. They're trying to clan cap, which is kind of also what's keeping it a stalemate. Because the first RB that I was in, at least, we had a lot of people, we had enough to capture the flag, but we just didn't have enough clannies on the flag. And the English fight kind of goofy, so they only use short sword and bow, which is impossible to cap the flag with because they just target the clannies, which is smart, by the way. I'm not dragging on it,
Yeah.
but we couldn't really capture the flag just because no official war was declared. But yeah, it's been kind of set at a stalemate because of that, and then they started rallying more throughout the RB, and then it just got more and more difficult progressively.
Yeah.
And so.
And KOJ helping them with that. I've heard that it's a CCA vs Abbasid and Antioch type thing going on.
Yeah, KOJ has been doing quite the number. I feel like they've rallied more than KOE, at least on average during the RBs I've been in, but I don't feel like they have had any sort of impact to the level where they're carrying yet, but they definitely have rallied a little more than KOE.
Yeah. Well, obviously with the English situation right now with, what's his name, Super Enceladus, yeah. He's still a new king, stuff has been relatively unstable for him in his first few weeks.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Super is, I feel like, I don't know, he's a decent king. I just don't understand what drove him to declare war immediately on Abbasids. That was just a bit random to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the reason, but like I'm completely in the dark on that one. So
I have no clue on the reason too, which actually wanted me to bring you to another question, actually, if that's cool, Valor.
Okay, go ahead.
It's how's it been having a Furious Wraith come over to Antioch after his coup, being overthrown as the English king?
Yeah, it was kind of goofy because when he came to Antioch, well, okay, first of all, let me preface with this: he didn't immediately come to Antioch. When I heard he was exiled, I messaged him to see how he was doing. It wasn't even to recruit him or anything, and he said that he wasn't done with Lionhearts. I had assumed that he was done, like he didn't want to play the game anymore since he was ousted or whatever. But he ended up saying that he wanted to stay and try and make something of himself somewhere else. So I was like, okay, well, here are some suggested factions, and obviously you're always welcome in Antioch as well. And he just ended up coming to Antioch later on, and we went from there. But the funny part is he didn't even come. He didn't come to Antioch to fight the English, because we didn't even know we were gonna fight the English or even ally Abbasids at the time when Furious was here. And just to put it out there, by the way, like, Furious had nothing to do with us allying Abbasids and fighting KOE. He didn't even know we were going to ally Abbasids and fight KOE until after the decision was made and I told him. So, just to put it out there for anyone thinking that, like, Furious had something to do with influence on fighting KOE.
Yeah. How's it been with them, with the CSA? What does it stand for again?
A lot of people think it stands for, like, the Confederacy of the United States. Well, people. Yeah, he was joking about it, bro. When I made that, I didn't know that that's what it was gonna, like, be construed as. Like, it just didn't click in my mind that it would, like, that was the acronym also for that. But no, it doesn't. Like, obviously, it doesn't stand for that. It stands for the Crescent Shield Alliance.
Right, that's cool. Yeah, no, that's interesting to hear what's going on over there with your guys' war. Hopefully that goes pretty damn well.
I mean, we're hoping it's going well so far.
I think we should take a look at some of the other, like, political turmoil which is going on around the world.
Yeah, let's go for the Hospitalers, man.
Yeah. That is one. So you're actually bordering them too. So, you know, this is something you could probably talk about first.
So I don't actually. Okay, so a lot of people think that Antioch and Hospitalers have, like, a rivalry. That's not true. I don't think, like, I don't have any beef with Hosp. I don't think Hosp has any beef with me. But a lot of people think that we want to attack each other. Not true. It's just not true. As far as, like, Hosp with other factions, it kind of looks like Hosp wants to war someone. I mean, they just got their old gens back, right? I think their names are Romka and
Romka. They have the Dutch Crusader back. He's a massive one. I don't think you were here at the time, but
I wasn't.
He was one of the major icons of the faction.
Yeah. Why did he get banned?
He was genuinely, in my opinion, Katie, don't ban me, but he was banned because people said he was faction recruiting from other genres. Or, like, trying to recruit people to another genre from TTC.
Oh.
And low-key, whenever he just got elected as leader, and, like, 1 or 2 days later, I think his sway on a lot of the community was kind of regarded as edgy, maybe by judiciary, and they banned him. But he did have a massive influence, something as big as, like, you know, Psychic, or maybe Saddam with Seldrix, as we see now. He was a massive element of it. And actually, since we're on the podcast, I did ask him, what's your plans coming back? Do you aim to reclaim your position as Grandmaster? Because he only was Grandmaster for, 3 days before getting banned? Even though he was the person that was elected. He's like the sigil of Hospitalers. And he said no, he's too busy for college. But even him just being present, coming back, being unbanned, is a massive boost for the Hospitalers. So they are quite strong right now.
I would agree under normal circumstances, but so we were supposed to have a practice war with Hosp this Friday, and they ended up canceling it and said that they weren't rallying the amount they feel like to even, like, contend with us, I guess. Well, he didn't say it in that specific way. The way Mag said it was that they just weren't rallying that amount, but, like, why else would they cancel it if they weren't even, you know, gonna be able to, like, contend, I guess is the way I think about it. So I don't know. I think Hospitalers would be able to rally enough to contend, but I think they're just kind of, like, doubting themselves right now.
Yeah. Damn, that's quite a shame. I think no, they definitely still have lots of potential. They could definitely do something with that. It's more momentum than they've had in a long time. Same with Sicily, which I just saw in the previous rally earlier today. So I think both of those factions definitely have lots of potential going forward. Definitely forge a path for themselves. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about the tier list real quick too, because, like, Myth just came out with a tier list, right? So I'm gonna ask you a few questions, right? A, what do you think about your placement in the tier lists?
So for France
and for you personally.
That's a really good question. So I think, first of all, for France, I don't think we deserve S tier at the moment. Genuinely being clean cut and speaking from an honest standpoint, I'd say maybe B tier in terms of power. Like, you know, we can still rally a good 10 people, 15 people,
Yeah.
and fight a battle, but we're nowhere close as to where we were. I don't want to discredit all of the efforts that. Oh shit! Cute cooking is speaking. Oh yeah, sorry. I don't want to discredit all of the efforts that
Very good.
discredit all of the efforts that Renshiru has done, because he's been trying to still put in some good effort. Maybe not as much as you would expect, but that's because he's one of the old gens like me, and he kind of understands that a lot of the work that you have to do is redundant. Diplomatically, since I'm still kind of in charge of that aspect, I reckon that we still have a good influence with the Byzantines and obviously you guys and stuff. So diplomatically, I'd say maybe around A tier, not S tier or anything. But we still do hold lots of influence and weight. So that's good. So yeah, I wouldn't downplay France too much. Maybe it's my bias, but I wouldn't put us in the upper echelon compared to maybe the Seljuks, Byzantines, Teutonics, and the Holy Roman Empire, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that for France, France definitely isn't S tier right now. Because when I think of S tier, I think of Biz, right? Like I think of, like Biz power, like they're extremely strong right now. Like Biz is really popping off lately. And by the way, I don't know how Howling wasn't like S tier. I'm gonna be so real with you. Like,
yeah,
like he really should have been like S tier on the list. But anyhow, in terms of France, I think I honestly think even still with Antioch gaining the members, I think France and Antioch are kind of in similar positions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say France. Like what I would say is that like France has like the historical like background, and you guys are able to bring like veterans back, right? I do feel like Antioch has probably a little more consistent members now. But I feel like if you guys really wanted to win a war, you could bring a ton of old gens back and be at the same power. So like for me, it's kind of like the same. I feel like we're at the very same level at the moment.
Yeah,
so
same. I definitely agree with you. I do think you guys probably, with some of the new people that have joined as well into Antioch, you guys definitely have more consistent members. Yeah. No, we still have lots of old gens, but obviously there's been sort of a soft lock, as somebody said, in the French community as well, because so many of the vets who were there probably didn't bother to even get the free paid access.
Yeah, I mean,
they just pulled out.
I mean, you guys, bro. Like, I told this to Ren, and then he made a joke about me giving him 30K, so I just didn't reply. But I told him if France needs Antioch, you know, wealth, like we got him. I mean, like, look, bro, we got me and Infinity in one faction. Like, we're undoubtedly the richest faction in the game, man.
Yeah, man. That's great to hear, yeah. Obviously, Antioch has some great wealth, some great influence as well, with you guys being in the Northern Triumvirate, you know, being the founders of it, with you creating that. So that's obviously been a great source of importance to the faction. And if you wanted to go ahead and speak a tiny bit about that, how's it been heading out the Northern Triumvirate power, something to oppose the Federation, disregarding the, what's it called, Crescent Alliance in the south?
So I feel like, okay, so there needs to be a separation on the Northern Triumvirate and the Anti-Feds. So the Anti-Feds as a collective is a very loosely held group of people that just oppose the Federation, which is pretty much literally everyone but the Federation at this point. So by Anti-Feds, it is more of a loose connection of people. I would say mainly it's the SCA and NT working in tandem to take down the Federation, which has been going very well, by the way. I feel like there have been some underhanded tactics on our end. For example, Saddam. I don't think anyone in the community other than Saddam agrees with what he did. But nevertheless, it did, you know, weaken the Federation. I think Northern Triumvirate as an organization has been doing very well to secure the North for the factions in the North. I mean, the Byzantines are extremely safe. The Assassins are extremely safe. Antioch is extremely safe. At this point, so are Seljuks. I mean, they used to be surrounded by question marks. Now they're allied with their northern neighbors. They are connected straight to Cyprus, which was just replaced with Psychic, who is anti-Fed. So that front's closed. And then to their south, directly to their south, they have the Ayyubids, which they're, you know, also aligned with. So they're safe there. So the north is very safe right now, and that was kind of the original thought going behind the Northern Triumvirate going in. It was to make the north as safe as possible and get the entire north to unite on that. The only thing in the north that is an outlier would be the Hospitallers, which for some reason are deathly afraid of NT attacking them. I don't know why, but they are. So to any Hospitallers or Mag or Morning, if you're listening to this, no one's gonna attack you. Like I said, our main like reason for NT even, you know, being formed was to secure the north, and obviously there's been kind of a side quest now going for the Federation because they are a threat to the north. So yeah, I mean, I would say as a whole it's been going very good. We have been in talks with other nations as well that have, you know, recently switched to the anti-Fed side that have been interested in joining the Northern Triumvirate. So we'll see what it has to hold for the future, but so far it's been going pretty well. So
Wonderful. That's a great to hear. Well said. You mentioned, I mean, obviously if you want to ask me some questions, I'm down too, but you mentioned the Cypriots just now, and obviously we've seen a massive puppeting happen with the Seljuks being in charge of that. They're the ones who sort of brought this to light. They're the ones who puppeted the Cypriots directly, and we've seen that they've just released a treaty which seems sort of one-sided from a perspective in the political declarations. And what's your opinion on that?
I didn't. No, you're good. I didn't get to read it directly. I read what Saddam had wrote about it in declarations, but I didn't click on the treaty and read the actual treaty. So I'm not really sure what is in the treaty if it isn't what Saddam had put in declarations. But if it is, then unfortunately, Cyprus had kind of, you know, sown their own fate when they decided to attack Biz that many times. I mean, it's okay. Like, it's perfectly fine to, you know, like, attack a faction and try and gain territory. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. But when you're repeatedly doing it and doing it without consent, eventually you're gonna have to understand that you're not gonna go about doing that and then be unpunished. Especially when Biz was like, hey, this is getting very annoying, and then they make a treaty, and then you break the treaty, and then you bring in the Federation, which like, obviously NT doesn't like the Federation, and then you bring in their enemies to fight them for, you know, garrisons that you don't deserve because you can't rally that you know, that many troops to actually take it yourself. So no heat to lettuce or anything, but it's like, you know, at the end of the day, if you can't take it, then you can't take it. But anyways, back, like, you know, like, back onto the topic of like Seljuks and Cyprus. If you're doing all that, and then on top of that, you know, not punishing your members for trying to make an uprising in a faction like Seljuks, especially in Seljuks, I mean, like, you know, like, given their history, it's just, at the end of the day, it like that treaty, you know, like, it came out of that, and, you know, it is what it is. Like Hawash had to be taken. I'm sure Psychic understands. But yeah, I mean, and, like, I just kind of think it is what it is. Like, you know, you gotta kind of take the hand you were dealt and realize, like, at least if you're Psychic, that your predecessors, you know, kind of messed up the faction. Like, they're the ones who you know, like turned it into something that it shouldn't have been. The war.
Speaking of which, one of the French high ranks called Mranha, back in the days before I think you joined, he was on the enemy team under Psychic's Empire, and we used to fight him in France like Spears. But he switched over to France when Cyprus collapsed and Lattice took control and Psychic retired. But now he's just returned with Psychic returning, sorry. And apparently it's been quite a stressful environment, with half of Cyprus being brainwashed by Letters, quote unquote, and half being loyalist to Psychic. So we see that there's lots of tension happening right now in Cyprus as a faction. How do you think this is going to end? Do you think they're going to do a coup, or do you think Psychic will be able to get a stranglehold on his old empire and try and revert it back to what it once was?
I don't really know. I think you're actually more qualified to talk about this, but I will say that
Yeah, I'm down to.
Psychic is, from what I know, is a powerhouse. Like he came into the genre, took it by storm, and left in the same way. You know what I mean? So, from what I'm told, I mean, maybe he can, maybe he can't. I mean, Lettuce did have a pretty like he was pretty popular in Cyprus because of well, like to be fair though, he did kind of exile everyone that thought he wasn't a good leader after the rebellion. So I don't know. It could go either way from my perspective, but I think you have more to offer.
I'll give my opinion on this too, because this isn't even the first or second or third time Psychic has been leader. This is the fourth.
Yeah.
So I was there for like 3 of his reigns when I was king. So obviously I had to directly deal with him, and I can definitely say this. And if Isaac wasn't, you know, we won't get into Isaac, but if he wasn't doing his stuff, then I think that Psychic is probably one of the most competent leaders that the genre had, along with the Hero Doctor. And we can bring the Hero Doctor on for a podcast at some point, and he could definitely vouch. Psychic is probably one of the most influential leaders. Yeah, that would be legendary. Psychic is probably one of the most influential leaders, I'd say, that Cyprus has had. He's definitely been aggressive to the Byzantines, and in consequence France, because we've always had to help the Biz once Thessa was being sieged. But yeah, Cyprus have been like the major powerhouse that Biz has actually genuinely had to compete with. These days with Lettuce, they were sort of a laughing stock. Thessa would be sieged, we take it back, and it was pretty much it. But at the time, Thessa was genuinely contested, and the Cypriots were a major powerhouse, as you said. So I think that Cyprus coming back is really a big momentous occasion for the genre, and I think everybody should be on alert, because he can be a wild card. I'm not sure if he'll join the Federation, the Coalition, or just stay neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I got the same vibe. I mean, because I feel like on one hand, Saddam did install him, and Saddam is anti-Fed, but at the same time, he's psychic, so it's yeah.
Trust me, psychic is eccentric. He does anything.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that especially from what I've heard.
I would not be surprised if he just starts attacking the Byzantines again or something. We'll see.
I mean, that'll be a tough road ahead for you.
Psychic is never a stupid leader, and he knows not to attack powerhouses stronger than his own faction at a time. And I don't think he's want to bow to any mega state. So he could just stay neutral, and that's also still a massive change from just being part of the Federation under Lettuce.
Yeah, it wouldn't be shocking if he just stayed neutral and built up his power, like consolidated his power while, you know, like these mega states fight it out.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But as far as world conflicts, I don't feel like France, and this is something I feel like people need clarified just in general. France doesn't exactly have like they don't have any specific enemies other than the Federation as an organization, but as far as like who you guys fight, it kind of seems like you guys just want in the fight wherever that is. Is that how you guys kind of view the Federation, or am I wrong here?
No, I'd say you're definitely right, especially with the new regime under Renshiru. We haven't exactly taken the helm since the Capetian Empire, which was more of a way of just giving everybody else, like in an opportunistic way, a chance of getting their own liberation, which also gives you power.
Yeah.
So in that way, we were happy to help all of those other factions, but obviously many of them weren't grateful in that exchange. I think at the time there wasn't as many leaders who were just prone to taking initiative, apart from just relying on one faction, which is sort of an issue. And I think that's what you've done well with the NT. You've developed a good alliance of people who actually want to fight for themselves. Same with the SCA. I think this decentralized system has been quite effective. But yeah, no, at the moment, I think it's more just so as taking activity where we can get it. Obviously, we're still surrounded by the Federation, but nobody's really daring to attack Acre directly, which is fortunate for the moment. But we're always under threat from Federation powers on all ends, and that's why we want to sort of lower their influence, because we don't want to stay surrounded by all of these powers, of course.
Yeah, and regarding Acre, by the way, listening into the meeting, well, not the meeting, but the interview, it kind of sounded like Myth started to kind of realize like what kind of position Acre was in from its positioning in CL. So
yeah,
I'm hoping maybe he realizes like, hey, this is extremely unfair to the French. Maybe we should move Acre to Sicily.
It really is really unfair. But geographically, Acre is on the coast of the Levant. It's just design-wise how they decided who gets which garrisons.
I mean, it could also...
I wouldn't mind losing like a garrison in Sicily to get at least one in Central to block Acre.
Maybe even better, would it be good to get Syracuse as a capital instead of Acre, but keep Acre as your side base? Or would that be...
I kind of like Acre as the main base, to be honest.
No, I do too. I think it's better as a main base, but
even taking the risk of losing it, I think it makes it even more worth fighting for, if that makes sense. So in that way, yeah. In that interview with Myth, like he said, was it one of the major catalysts to creating this defensive barrier? And I think for a long time it actually was. Obviously, when we sort of quote-unquote won that war against Teutonics at first, while fighting Sicily, we captured Zekinin and Nazareth and Megiddo. So there was always another objective, like in the super long run, trying to secure just the Acre border. It kind of gives us something to do. So that's one reason we fight the Federation as well.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. So as far as so going into the last political thing I want to ask you about, and then we'll move on to the next section. Yeah. This is more of a joke one, but what do you think about Myth and Holland?
Oh boy. So I'm not sure. Have you watched the video today?
I haven't watched the Holland video, no.
Oh wow, you've missed out. But in terms of like just fun and entertainment, you should trust me. You should watch this video. It's actually really, really entertaining. I think it's a great way of bringing new recruits into the game.
Yeah.
With Shadow Skull and just the entire Holland situation, sure, it's a free rank, and maybe it could like biasly attract more people who just want to follow like the most popular guy in the game, which is Myth. But I think it's good that he's actually getting involved with the community, deciding to dedicate some of his time to actively see what it's like playing in road battles, because we've seen him in road battles and hosting events now, actually, as Holland leader.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for him to actually gain this first-hand experience, because he hasn't genuinely played the game in a long, long time, since even before Reforged. So yeah, I kind of support his new player experience, and he's also posting content about it, which is good for advertisement. I just requested to him maybe he could make some, faction in a nutshell games. Only the special listeners of Valor and Dice podcast will get a heads up on this. But he could make like a faction in a nutshell for every single faction, and this could go on the YouTube channel. And I think he's got some good potential, just joining factions like Holland and HRE, and that could be just good for the long run, man.
Yeah. I think if he treats like Holland seriously, which I don't know if he is because I'm not in the Holland Discord, but if he is treating Holland seriously, I feel like that would be good for not only HRE but just for the community, because I feel like he needs first-hand experience of what it's like to play his own game.
Yeah.
I think he said he went undercover in Hospitalers at one point, but I think that's as far as he ever went. But yeah. Moving on, I want to move on to like game features, because there's been a lot of talk about a lot of different things relating to Lionhearts and things that could be added. But first, I want to start with status effects, because there's been a lot of talk about people saying, oh, like they just need to remove status effects, period. Is there anything you feel like Myth could do in order to fix status effects, or do you feel like status effects just need removed entirely because maybe it doesn't fit into the game, or maybe there's no way to balance it, or what it may be.
I think status effects really aren't that bad as people say they are. This is probably a hot take, but like we live in an existence where for so much of the time, when you joined especially, where we have these super high level players, and they have such a leverage over low rank players, they can just massacre them at once. So I think status effects are good to sort of balance that out to some extent. Imagine where you have like 5 low rank players, they could surround a high level player with a fucking woods thing, excuse my language.
Yeah, you're good.
And at least one of them could at least get a lucky strike through RNG, which makes the player bleed a tiny bit based on the percentage of their health. Imagine he has like a cast armor and you're using arsenical swords. At least if they surround the guy, they can make him bleed or slow him down. Something to give an edge to players who can't really compete because they haven't played as long. So I like the idea of status effects because it gives those people in a lower level opportunity a chance to like team up and sort of balance it out by having all of these advantages if they could get a lucky hit on. It's not even a major advantage because your enemy could do the same to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think status effects like bleeding and stuff are cool. Maybe there was some issues with how it was implemented at first because it was percentage based, right? So there was lots of high rank players with super armor and all of this extra health and stuff. They were still losing most of their health after all of that grinding because of that percentage based stuff. But I think it's been reduced to a realistic amount where it hasn't been too intrusive, but it's still given some sort of opportunity for low rank players to come back from the issues that they faced. So I kind of like it. It can be annoying being maimed and stuff like that, but as long as it can give an opportunity for those lower level players to at least do something. They don't have to do massive damage, but at least they can maim the enemy if they're lucky,
Yeah. So the only problem I have with that is with status effects. I mean,
yeah.
I was in the region battle, right, fighting against Kingdom of England, and I remember just spawning in. I ran through Castellum and went to go fight, and an England guy comes up to me, right? He hits me once, and in one hit, I'm poisoned and maimed. Which
oh no, I think poison is like one thing, which is like it's the only status effect you have to craft for, right? And the thing is, it takes like gray mushrooms, which are like ultra rare. So most people can't make poison coating for their weapons very often. It's probably like a one-time thing. It's sort of like when somebody uses like a Wootz arrow or something, which is one shot. Yeah, I think it's more something like that. Definitely people who've stacked those gray mushrooms probably use them a lot at first. But I think now with the poison, because it's something you actually have to actively go to like a shop and make, and you have to gather the resources, I don't think it's too bad for what you're paying for it. So yeah, I think you probably got unlucky. Somebody saw you as, he's the leader of Antioch, and you were too important. They wanted to kill you with poison. Oh shit! Did you disconnect from the game?
Yeah. Let me reconnect, and we'll just cut it there.
All right.
As far as game mechanics, I kind of want to pivot over to something you've mentioned to me before, and something I have yet to suggest to Myth, but I will. But you mentioned something before about leaders being more important, because I mean, for example, like me and you are leaders. I feel like we put a lot of effort into the game. We are kind of what keeps the game active, right? Like if the game didn't have the roleplay aspect, and obviously if there's a roleplay aspect, you have to have a leader. But if the game didn't have the roleplay aspect, I don't think anyone would play it. I think that the game is driven off of roleplay. So with that said, it's driven off of the leaders' backs. So I feel like leaders should be more rewarded for what they're doing, especially given how much work it is. And Myth knows how much work it is. You know how much work it is, right? So I feel like players who get to be the leader should be more rewarded for being the leader. And there are rewards for being the leader. I'm not saying there aren't any, but I feel like there should be more game mandated rewards for being leader. You know what I mean? But and an example of that would be
I definitely agree.
That the NPC idea you had.
What with the caravans or like the faction quest.
With like the faction quest and also like small things like you mentioned to me once that like it'd be cool if you could have like a personal like retinue of like 2 guards or something
Yeah.
follow you around like Messina, or well, I mean in this case it'd be Jerusalem, but yeah.
They're just like guards or something. Like, you know, like the honor guards at the statue, something like that. But like, you know, it's less strong.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe don't give them like worse than 1,000 HP, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, like still something relatively strong, maybe like steel or I don't know, something.
Yeah, so
Just
what
to
are your
add further
ideas?
importance.
What are your ideas on that? On how you could maybe like mitigate that feeling of not being rewarded enough for being leader?
Yeah, I mean that's difficult. Personally, to me, it's like I reckon it should just be something which is both cultural and like just in the foundations of what uh, faction mechanics should be. So like just faction stuff should just be way more in depth. There should be more faction quests, you know, stuff like that. There should be some sort of aspect to tax collecting as a leader. You know, you can have like barons under you, and then after like counts, stuff like that. I feel like just the leader stuff would go hand in hand with more faction low rank stuff, where people could own house like free houses. I think Myth is currently working on a property update to make property limited for cities, so that could definitely increase importance and tax rates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I feel leaders should just have more, maybe also roleplay aspects, which are more important. Because right now, you see a leader by himself in like Jerusalem, you're like, this fucking loser, like King Ale. No offense, King Ale. You know, thank you for a podcast. But, like, I feel so many leaders, even if Howling, who's legendary, would come in, he wouldn't have like a personal guard or anything. I feel like it's the medieval leader aspect is lacking. And that's something which is both a cultural thing, but it could also be pushed by more faction updates. And
Yeah.
giving some sort of opportunities for low ranks. Maybe gain faction contribution if they're sticking around high ranks. Because we used to have a mechanic where if you stuck around anybody from your same faction, every minute you would get 1+ faction contribution. So I know it's mechanically possible. So if you could stay around like maybe your high ranks as a royal guard, you could still gain faction contribution when around them, you know? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Maybe to reward leaders. With that idea, maybe like the same thing, but if you're around your leader. But then the only thing that that I have an issue with, and this is I think the original reason why they removed it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what they were doing was just sitting AFK in their bases and then just sitting around their like just sitting around each other and then gaining like infinite contribution, which that can be a problem. I agree, but maybe maybe there has to be like a system put in place. Like for example, if you gain like I don't know like 20 contribution, then like there's an AFK check, and if you lose the AFK check, then you get I guess just kicked from the server. I don't know, but there has to be some sort of like check or something for that, something that like influences that towards giving leaders more benefits. I feel like because there needs to be there needs to be more of an incentive because right now like I feel like it's important for leaders to be the vehicle of the game, right? Because without leaders, again, there wouldn't be a game. So
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be a vehicle to drive, you know, drive that in. And if you don't have like really good leaders, like if you don't have people striving to be up there, then it just doesn't push the game as far. Whereas if you have a ton of people wanting to be leader.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that I was wanting to touch up on was bugs. So one of the biggest issues in Lionhearts are, I feel like, is bugs, right? So what are the most problematic bugs, and what do you think can be done on the studio's end to fix them? Because they're not getting fixed right now, despite the bugs being known.
Yeah, so I feel like right now there's a lot of statecraft bugs. So diplomatically, if you sign a NAP, I think the person who signs a NAP doesn't get the honor. It's only the person who receives it. So that's probably pretty big because there's such massive wars happening, and honor is a massive part of factions. So that's probably one of them. Apart from that, infinite loading can always still be quite a major issue. I think it will always be an issue, but they've done better with it recently. It's been less of an issue, but there's still lots of lower end PCs and people with lower performance still can't get into the game without multiple loading screens because they get stuck and they have to rejoin.
Yeah.
Also, I think maybe with matchmaking, yeah, there's lots of bugs there too because it's become sort of a thing for people to start grinding faction contribution. And me personally, from my experiences, I've hosted some literally 2 hours ago, and people will just in your party will just randomly all get kicked from your matchmaking game, which makes it really, really difficult to host. So that's another big problem that we currently have. Apart from that, yeah, Valor, do you have any other bugs that you've ran into? These are the most of the ones I have.
So the bugs that I've had the most problems with is the painting bug, like in the embassies. So the paintings don't actually take you to your base, which is problematic because when someone joins from another faction or they're just new to the game, they have to travel like a very long way in order to get to your faction base, which is problematic when you're doing rallies. I don't think that people should just be able to, you know, like go into someone else's like faction what is it, embassy, and like teleport to their base, obviously, but like in terms of like Antioch, if someone's Antioch, I want them to be able to go into the Antioch embassy and then travel to the base, because that's the only way to do it. And it's not like I can host a rally anymore; those don't work either. So it's, you know, there's no way to get
rallies. Don't host me?
No, they're not working. At least for me. Do they work for you guys?
We usually host trainings, and those sort of work. I have to try them again. They don't always work. Sometimes people don't get them and they have to rejoin. So yeah, actually adding on to that, I think that's quite inconsistent too. They need to try and fix those bugs because so many people don't get the rally pings, training pings.
Oh, you know a big one? Naps.
Naps, yeah.
Naps, yeah. Naps. For leaders, that's got to be the most annoying thing. And I found, I don't know if you know about this. Do you know like the way around that?
No, what is it?
So, as a leader, and for any leaders watching this, you're welcome. If you send someone a nap and they're unable to accept it, what you do is you decline and then resend them, and then the other person tries to accept it, and if that doesn't work, then you just repeat the process repeatedly, and over the course of maybe like 3 or 4 naps sent, it should work at some point. So if you just repeatedly do it over and over again, and it's always one person sending it and then the other person accepting it, and then it being like vice versa, it works. It works pretty quickly, at least in my experience. So, but outside of that, like, you shouldn't have to do that in order to, you know, like, get the actual game to work. I don't think you should have to do that.
That's cool.
Outside of the realm of bugs, though, let's talk about the map, right? The mini map. So before, all you had to do was discover a garrison, and it would show you the area around the garrison, like it would clear up the fog. Now you have to do these cartography quests, and in order to clear up the fog, you can't like, you have to do them. So what do you think about the cartography quests, and if you could remove them or improve them or keep them, you know, the same, like what would you do to them?
That's an amazing question, actually, because you know what, today, literally maybe 4 hours before we spoke just now, for you asking me this question, I finally DM'd Civilian on because Cyber told me to, because I've known this map for what, literally years. I know it like the back of my hand, more than somebody who's done the cartography quest, and every single map takes around 2 hours to do, and I was like, no, this is fucking ridiculous. So I just asked Civilian to just give me all of the maps today, after what, 6 months. I asked him to give me the maps today, and I think they're quite redundant for so many players who've already gone through it. Because, you know, it's something really tedious for something that they already know. But for new players, especially now that it's paid access, it's probably sort of some good content loop, I suppose, for them. It gives them something to do, and you know, it kind of gives it incentivizes any new players to start exploring these regions so that you don't really have to show it to them as the faction leader. So I think that's cool for those new gens. You know, it's something better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
But for those of us back in the day, I don't think they should have reset all of the data for every single person, because that's really fucking redundant, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just glad that Civilian was able to just give me the entire map today, finally. And yeah, no. Since you just asked me, that was a question. That was a great question. But what's your opinion on it? Because I know that you've explored the map just as soon as you joined France a few months ago, 9 months ago.
Yeah, and
Or even 11 months.
I'll answer that, and we'll end on a more personal note after that, which is like the start of the game and the experience. But so when I first joined, as you know, I joined France, and one of the first things I did was explore the entire map. I spent 8 hours, like a little over 8 hours, just roaming the map, just walking around, looking at every garrison, exploring every single question mark there was on every single region, and like it took 8 hours. It took a long time. So
yeah,
I don't want to do that again. I've already done it. You know what I mean? Like, the joy of exploration isn't re-exploring the places that you've already explored. Like, I don't want to do it again.
Just really quickly, did you get the map back, or do you have to do cartography quests? Are they forcing you?
So like, I have the garrison points. Like, I can teleport to garrisons, but
Yeah, same.
my
What
like
about the actual map?
yeah, I haven't done any cartography quests, so it's just a big like fog for me.
Yeah, it's a big fog, and we don't deserve that, man. We're like veterans, you know.
Yeah, I
We've
know.
already seen all of this stuff.
I mean, quite literally, I've seen every single base and map in the game. So
Yeah, same.
I mean,
it's just a shame.
I think I've seen every single question mark too. Like, I think I've seen every single thing there is to see.
That's dedication. And yet they still force you to go through the fog of war, man. Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I don't think it's something that the studio intentionally wanted to do. I think they probably wanted to do it for player retention, but it kind of backfired because now everybody has to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So to end this part, I also kind of want to ask. So it's been in recent news that Credenzio is kind of expanding their employees, and I wanted to see what you thought about the new employees. You like like me going to the office and them hiring on the new animator.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Valor, congratulations going to the office. I know you already have lots of success with your own studios.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the stuff the studio could accomplish with your manpower and your department essentially heading there. Apart from you heading there and just knowing that there's some general integration happening, I'm not really sure about all of the others. Do you mind giving us some updates on that, some context, if that's all right? NDA.
No, it's not. So what I'll say is that the new animator, I'm friends with him IRL. We've met on, like, we met like IRL before. We actually met on Roblox, but he lives very close to me, so.
Oh, sweet. So you just met in real life afterwards?
Yeah. We became pretty close friends.
That's really cool.
We actually met when he was pretty much like, he knew how to animate, but he wasn't like really great at it at all. And over time, he kind of got better. But we kind of watched each other grow up in our careers, right? So like when I met him, I was like a builder, or I was supposed to be a builder, but I was very like lackluster. And over the years, like, we've seen each other grow and grow and grow, and like eventually, I became into what I became, and he went to college and got a degree and a certificate afterwards for animation. Yeah, so he's very qualified, and nice. Yeah, he's just kind of excited to get started at a studio coming out of college, and he's very pumped to get to work, and hopefully over the course of time, like once enough time has passed, he'll be able to revamp some of the Lionhearts animations. So I mean, maybe we'll see a revamp of all the animations coming to Lionhearts as well.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Glad to hear that you guys are going to work on these projects, especially in unison with the studio. Obviously, yeah. Right now they're probably a bit confidential. The other sort of projects taking part. So if we don't want to get too much into it, I reckon, unless it's up to you.
Yeah.
But, that's cool, man. Glad to
Yeah.
hear.
So moving on to the final part. Let's just talk a little bit about more of our career paths, because given we had a third person, it would be kind of more of like an interview thing. So we'll just talk about each other in this one. But so in terms of I feel like your career path is pretty straightforward, right? So from what I know, you were in biz for a solid amount of time, and you worked your way up to Emperor. And correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but you worked your way up to Emperor, and eventually France was added to the game, and then you became France King, and then you were France King for, I think you said 3.5 years, and then
3 years and 6 months.
Yeah. And then you retired. Is that your career path?
When we're talking about TTC, yeah, that's roughly my career path. Obviously, I haven't really calculated how long I was in leader. Maybe, around 3 years and 6 months there. In Byzantines for around 10 months. That is pretty much my career path, in TTC.
So how'd you get into France? Like, I mean, not France, but biz.
Oh, I'm glad somebody's actually asking me that question. I mean, I spoke about it in my stream about how I was part of another game and stuff, and after I came over here.
Yeah.
And the first faction I joined was actually England. I just saw like 2 random English dudes. And at the time, I knew nothing about the Crusades, to be frank. So I just joined, they have cool lions, golden lions. They're the English. I live in England. So I joined them. They were quite trash, to be fair, at the time. So I saw Byzantines were quite active. They had Variki as like a high rank back then, and a guy called Frontage of Legend as the Emperor. So I joined them. I was active for a few months, maybe like 6 months. I got like officer. Then I took a break for 2-3 months, got demoted a bit. Then I came back and I got to Emperor eventually.
Okay.
And it was just that's where I found it and discovered lots of the future France high ranks, like Fluffy Muffin, Ren Shiru was there as well.
Yeah.
And it was a good time, man. And that's basically where my legacy here started.
So you'd start. Would you say that your career in France or biz was more impactful?
Relatively, I'd say. Biz, because biz is literally the catalyst which got me to become King of France. My biz reign was very, very successful, and that's essentially what made Myth come back a few years later when I had retired from Biz Emperor and say, listen, we need you to be a king of this new faction, blah blah blah. I know you're French in real life, so take over. And they also got lots of other faction leaders from to lead the new factions at the time, but they all retired after 2 weeks. So I was the only one to stick around. So I think what my reputation in biz is what brought me to where I was in France. So I have a big thank to both of them, even though I've had much more history afterwards being in France.
Yeah. So in terms of France, what do you feel? I feel like, well, I would say from what I know, your biggest achievement in France would be the Capetian Empire, right?
Actually, to be frank, I had almost nothing to do with the Capetian Empire, apart from just, I guess, founding it eventually after a long period of time. But I think, the Capetian Empire was culminated after, the other three years of my reign. Lots of people forget about those times, and they just think about the last 6 months of the Capetian Empire. But the other 3 years is where I think I really solidified everything, because that's where we were basically conquering the entire map 24/7. 7 days a week.
Yeah.
With biz, and lots of people weren't there for that, so they just see the last bit of the Capetian Empire, which was basically, like I said, the culmination, but definitely not what I personally remember it too much for, because I was abroad for most of that entire war. If you remember, I was in Tunisia.
Yeah. So would you say, okay, so you're saying it's the culmination of what's happened before that? So tell me a little bit about your interaction with the start of the Federation and how it came to you ultimately trying to be their downfall.
Yeah, nice. So after Magna Terram, we basically just think of everything before Magna Terram was Biz in France conquering the whole map. SBA were pretty much dead. We just conquered their bases for most of the time. Sicily with Rudolf Noki were very strong at some point in Sicily, and they were fighting with us over the base of Nicosia. Cyprus were dead, so Biz and Sicily were fighting over Nicosia. Hospital and France were backing them up. So
Yeah.
after Magnet released, because of our positioning with Acre, we were really in a weak spot. And Sicily would team up with Teutonics, and Teutonics declared war on us because Rudo told them to from Sicily, and we would just have a 5 to 6 month war with the Teutonics. And at the time, there was no vassalization or anything, so they could capture Acre for 2 weeks. We would capture Malbork for 2 to 3 weeks, and it just kept going back and forth until Saturn and I finally made peace, because Saturn was the Archmeister back then. And essentially, at the time, he ceded us Zechariah, Megiddo, and Tiberias, and Nazareth to France. So we were like, okay, nice, we can finally go focus on Sicilians, and we did, and we pushed all of them back. Ruda retired, we conquered all of Sicily, literally 100% the map, and then we gave them half back, and they've been dead ever since. But after that, yeah, we were sort of just dealing with a bunch of other wars, HRE and stuff, and we finally joined the Feds because we just felt bored, and everybody was teaming on the Teutonics, like the SBA at the time. We felt kind of bad, and they had just founded the Federation, so we joined it as one of the first members. Just keep that in mind, with England and HRE too.
Yeah.
And Biz and France were basically tasked with, in the first Federation War, everybody teamed up on France, Biz, Teutonics, Templars, and HRE in England. And at this time, HRE in England could not even rally 5 people each. Just keep that in mind. So France and Biz were in Northern Levant fighting C3 Bros Antioch, fighting the Assassins, who had K-pop at the time, like Chapika and all of that shit, and like 4 other people like Chapika called Indifi, fucking, what's the other, I forgot the rest of the names. Yeah, Seljuks were part of it. And so, yeah, Cyprus under Psychic were part of it. And we were fighting all of these factions, plus Sicily. So we were fighting 5 factions at once, just France X-Biz, and we somehow won. Another time, Teutonics were only fighting Ayabids and Zengids, and somehow they were struggling against only those 2 factions while we were fighting in the north against all of your factions. So we were kind of pissed off that we joined this alliance and they were doing nothing. And at the time, England was led by a guy called Jeff, right?
Yeah.
And I was pissed off that he was only rallying like 3 people. So I'm actually the person who made Furious Wraith the leader, because I spoke to, Andrew.
Yeah.
I spoke to Andrew and I spoke to Furious. I said, listen, this Jeff guy he's bad for you, blah blah blah. And I spoke to Andrew. I said, listen, this Furious guy wants to take over. Can you demote Jeff? And after I went to Jeff's DMs and I was like, listen, man, you're kind of making your faction suffer. I was putting pressure on him. I said, you're making your faction suffer, by not retiring. Everybody's pissed off at you, and they all were. So I essentially overthrew the English king and put Furious in charge. And then he finally helped us out, and they started saving us. HRE tried to send some people, but they could only rally 6 at a time. But somehow we won the first Federation War, and that was insane. And right after that war, it essentially ruined literally all of our summers. Imagine having a free summer and you're spent no-lifing fucking Lionhearts.
Yeah.
At the time, lots of people were addicts. And this was back when RBs were happening every 2 hours, not every 12 hours.
Yeah.
And so we were pissed off. We were like, fuck, we won, but at what cost? Nothing has changed. France and Biz wasted our entire summers. And then Saturn somehow got into a fight with Juice's Zengids, just in a 1v1. Then Zengids started somehow beating Teutonics. And back in this day, the Federation had a rule that everybody's military was shared. So everybody's military had to be under the Teutonics. Doesn't matter what faction leader you are. And so when the Zengids started beating the Teutonics, right after we just suffered and ruined our entire summer, Saturn DM'd me saying, what the fuck, dude? Why aren't you helping us with the Zengids? You guys are fucking useless. France suck. And I said, I'm not going to help you with this war. I don't care what you say. We just fucking fought a massive war. My guys are pissed off and tired. We're not going to help you fight the Zengids. It's the Zengids. You guys should be able to beat them anyway, 1v1. So because he started insulting me in chat, I left the Federation that day. And that's ever since we've had a rift. So
Yeah.
that's how the rift happened. So just to answer your question.
So, what is the And by the way, that was a great sort of excerpt about how it all started and like culminated into what would eventually be the Commission Empire.
There's some bias. I'm very happy if we can have a podcast if you want with Saturn, who's retired now, or we can have it with Tarask
Yeah.
if you want. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
I feel like that was a really good culmination of what would what this like eventually would turn into with the feds. But I feel like after hearing that, I'm more I don't know, it's just interesting to hear the past of the Federation and how they were kind of in a similar position as to what the anti-Fed factions were in before the Federation got very strong. So it's just interesting to hear that. But back to the topic, which would be France. So after you had left the Federation, I don't assume you immediately tried to start destroying it. I assume you left, and then over time it kind of snowballed into you having to attack it. So what exactly did they start doing that kind of set France off specifically?
Yeah, so that's another amazing question actually, and you're right. So essentially, right after we retired from them, we wanted nothing to do with them and nothing to do with the enemy as well, right?
Yeah.
So we just stayed neutral for a good amount of time. The Byzantines. I think we attacked Ottoman Sicily in the meantime. They're always an easy target. I think they were antagonizing us at the time as well. So we just dealt with that. Then we released them. Blah blah blah. And then this is when the first Islamic Crescent Alliance formed, right? Byzantine and France were neutral at the time. So by themselves, all of the Islamic alliances and Ibis, with I don't know name guy, they literally annexed the Teutonics, and for the first time, people are really excited with the puppeting which happened this week. But no, the first official puppeting happened when they puppeted Tarask. During this war, right? And France was still kind of friendly with Teutons. So all of the Federation factions got puppeted. Not puppeted, conquered and annexed, except for Tarask, who got puppeted, and somebody called Nymph was put into the place of a Hochmeister. And to this day, the only reason Tarask is still a leader is because they had to beg for their position back. Essentially, the only reason the current Teutonic regime is going is because the Arabs felt bad for them and gave it back.
Wow, that's goofy.
Yeah, so there was a guy called Nymph who was put in place, but yeah, after begging, Teutonics got it back. And at the same time, France was trying to help the Teutonics in one of the RBs, because we still kind of felt bad for them, even though we didn't want to help as part of the Federation. So we went to go send some soldiers, and we got crushed with the Teutonics against the Islamic Alliance. So I don't know, name guy sieged Acre, because we were the only Christian nation left standing, essentially, which wasn't Orthodox. I think Antioch. No, I'm not sure what happened to Antioch, but yeah. So yeah, we got sieged. Acre got sieged. I called in a bunch of the veterans and stuff. We somehow held off against the raid. Teutonics helped us. Then France went over to vassalize the Ayyubids. Bolides was second in command at the time, and I didn't know the name guy was the Sultan. But since vassalizations just got added, we kind of wanted to take an opportunity to be the first faction to kill your vassal with kindness. So we just started sending them caravans of hundreds upon hundreds of iron ingots. There was no cast or wrought iron at the time. We started actually just doing joint trainings for the first time. We made a shared server, which was it had a very cute little sigil of both France and Byzantine and Ayyubids together. And we actually kind of developed them at the time. So then they got released. And Cyprus and Seljuks declared war on Ayyubids, and we said, we promise to help you defend. So we allied Ayyubids and beat Cyprus, which was owned by Psychic at the time. It was not a pussy faction, and the Seljuks, which was owned by Baritius, and we beat them. And then ever since, France and Biz have been extremely close. And then we started turning to the anti-Feds. And since we felt bad for little underdog factions like that, we attacked the Hosps in Sicily to try and bring them from the grave as well, like we did with Ayyubids, because we felt confident at the time. And to be fair, we did, because remember, Diamond took over Hospitalis, and after he sweared fealty to me. I'm not sure if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and after that, Hospitalis started rallying 10 on average, so I'd say we still succeeded. King Ale, he was still the same king at the time. But yeah, we still paid him back 200k, but they're still aggressive to us to this day. But yeah, essentially, we started feeling bad for all of the little underdog factions and thought, Well, you know, France is a good opportunity to try and bring all of these other ones to life. I guess we had a little bit of an ego boost after we helped out the Iobids. But to be fair, I think because of our help, that's where they are today, and they've been doing so well ever since.
Yeah. Um. So as far as something from recent memory coming into the Capetians, and this is the last I'll touch up on it, but going into the Capetians, what exactly was your motivator for supplanting 3D? And what do you think it turned out as? Like, do you think it was ultimately beneficial to supplant him, or do you think you shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, I mean, to be frank, at first, I had no intention to supplant 3D whatsoever. You know, when I first increased their wages, I guess that intentionally put down stability. But for me, it was unintentional because I did not have a good grasp of like the mechanics at the time. So I thought I was genuinely just paying them out like more to the hospitallers, being nice to try and boost their morale. You know, giving them more gold. But it actually did put their stability down. But either way, at the time, I still did not really agree with 3D's Wrecker's like regime. I don't think he was doing really great for the hospitals at the time. He had already been leading for 2 to 4 months. I think it was later when you joined. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't think he was too amazing. He wasn't terrible. I still think he was decent. But Diamond actually had a good following behind him, and he had lots of people boosting his morale. So I thought, damn, this guy actually does have like some symbolism of a leader. So I actually just backed it up because he seemed to be promising in terms of winning his support, and he did, to be frank. And he had a really good activity since. But sadly, we kind of lost in principle for that war. So I don't think it paid off in the long run, and that's sort of why we failed with Osman Sicily. I think if we could win there, we could have had them on our side and had that confidence for a long time.
Yeah. So you feel like overall it was generally not like you look back and regret puppeting him in, or
I don't regret puppeting Diamond, but I regret losing the war without getting them anything to pay it off. And also Diamond retired, so that was kind of a shame. I can
yeah.
already foretell that. I thought he would have stayed for quite a long time, but I guess the Capetian War had already exhausted him.
Yeah. So from what I have heard, I feel like France has been a pretty big a pretty large factor in the world stage for quite the like the time. I mean, I don't think from you being king from the entire time, what it sounds like is it's been pretty impactful the entire time.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely been impactful, but like we didn't have anything really to do with any other factions. We were quite aggressive as a faction to all of the others until relatively recently in that Capetian Empire. I feel that was the last time I achieved everything I wanted to, because before that we were conquering all of the factions, but in this one we sort of had them all under our wing, which was like the final, I guess, objective.
Yeah.
I definitely would have liked to like had a better result for everybody in the war, but I guess like I'm not really too heartbroken about it because we still relatively kept a white piece, but the defeat was that the Federation kept on existing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like despite it being white peace, it wasn't really white peace because the Ayyubids lost some garrisons, I believe.
Mm.
And that's another thing. I mean, let's also quickly touch up on the Federation and how you feel like they've impacted the world, because right now there's all sorts of organizations that's been like popping in and out, and just as a general overview, you have the feds and then you have the anti-feds. But as far as the Federation, do you feel like overall they've been more impactful or less, like in a positive way, or do you feel like they've been more impactful in a negative way for the whole community?
Like that's another amazing question. I know I've been saying that for a few of your questions now, but yeah, definitely that's a really interesting one because I've been thinking about this a lot myself. And some days I think, wow, you know what? Like they brought mega states to the game. They're the ones who sort of streamlined it, even before the first coalition.
Yeah.
Um, like I remember the day it happened, the day the Federation was formed, the game had never been the same to this day. So big props to them for that. But like in a way, it's sort of been a negative impact because the community has become way more toxic and way more aggressive for new players. Sadly, you've had to join into that, but you could have seen in the past, as a reference, people were way more like fucking wholesome. I'm not sure if you played Roblox in 2009, 2012, that sort of time span, 2008, but people were way more simple.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same sort of principle for this game. It's like that's the Federation is what split the classic community from like what we have now. So they've definitely changed the game. And sadly, I don't think we can ever go back because now it's just turned into a thing of get rid of the Federation by doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I don't even think it's get rid of the Federation anymore. It's just exist with your own safety so that the Federation, who are too stubborn, can't exist while having no other competitors.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk about trying to get the Federation dissolved and so in turn the anti-feds would dissolve. But
Yeah.
I've been there have been a lot of like deliberation on how to make that work, and I'm sure you've seen the Peace Talks Discord where all the leaders are just essentially yelling at each other. So what's your thought on the possibility of the feds maybe dissolving or NT maybe dissolving or any other organization possibly dissolving and going back to 1v1s and 2v2s? And what do you think is like the actual possibility of that? Like, do you think that may happen, or do you think that's just impossible?
Right, well, after I answer this, I want you as like a contemporary leader to also answer this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. In terms of dissolving the Federation, that's a tall order because this has turned into something which is such a concept and has been for so many years. And I think it's super easily possible, to be fair, but that's only through puppeting, and that's something that most of the genre leaders, including yourself, are very against. I can't speak, I'm not a high rank, or I haven't done any puppeting in my time either, because it was just such a bold move. But honestly, like, this current geopolitical context has made it so that it's way more possible, way more realistic for this puppeting to go on. Obviously, we've seen with Cyprus, it's definitely punched a hole in the Federation, you cannot deny.
Yeah.
Clearly, we could see that Tarasco was furious, and I would be too. Imagine this losing a whole. It's like losing the assassins. Imagine the assassins one day just got puppeted and put with a pro-Federation leader. I'm sure you'd be pissed off.
Yeah. So my view on it, like, I obviously think puppeting is wrong. I think in the case of Saddam, and I don't remember if I made this clear publicly, but I think in the case of Saddam, he wasn't really left with another choice to concretely stop the aggression. The only way that was possible for him to stop the aggression is puppeting. That doesn't mean I agree with it, but I feel like the reason behind it is enough to not be so pissed off at him that we just kick him out of NT. You know what I mean? I don't think he should do that again. I don't think, like, and we made that clear publicly, and the founders kind of got together for NT, and we were like, yeah, like we can't really just let this guy go around, pupping everyone and
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we kind of put a stop to it there, but at the same time we kind of recognized that, like, hey, there was literally no other way to stop this dude from being aggressive. And on top of that, objectively speaking, I don't think anyone could possibly say that Lettuce, and by the way, I like Lettuce as a person, but I don't think you could possibly say that Lettuce was a net positive leader because of what happened with Cyprus.
No, I definitely agree with you as well. I do think if there was any situation where you could say that an enemy faction forced your hand, that would be one. It's probably the most justifiable reason that they could have puppeted. Obviously, it was still a massive shock to the genre. But you were speaking about the Federation and like the entire puppeting aspect. How would you see the puppeting mechanic going forward with any of the remaining parties of the Federation? And how do you think Cyprus will be affected by it going in the long term?
Great question. So Cyprus, from what I know, I mean, like you said, they're kind of in turmoil internally right now. So I don't think there's any telling how it could affect Cyprus in the long run. Lettuce is gone from the faction. I don't think Lettuce is going to return. I don't think he's welcome in the faction anymore, with the loyalists kind of turning up for Psychic, and than the other half still being lettuce loyalists. So I feel like there's kind of like a really big divide in Cyprus. I don't really know how that's going to turn out, but in any case, and whatever happens, I just kind of hope like whoever comes up in Cyprus as a leader is, and it'll very likely be Psychic, but whoever comes up in Cyprus as a leader ultimately, I hope, is someone that's good for the faction as a whole and isn't the same way that Lettuce was. As far as the puppeting aspect and how the Federation views it, I do know that the Federation is supposed to be very against puppeting, but they're also very against, for example, like 3v1s or 3v2s, but they consistently do that. So I'm not really sure if they're actually against puppeting. But they have said, like stuff I've heard from, for example, Tarask, is that for people who do puppet, watch out. We are not afraid to puppet you. So I think Saddam kind of like put himself in a position where, in a case where he is vassalized, it's over for him. But I think, for example, if the Teutons rallied 100 tomorrow and conquered France, I don't think they're going to puppet Ren. If they did that to Seljuks, I believe they're going to puppet Seljuks, but I don't believe they would puppet Ren. Whether that is actually, how it's going to work, and whether, like, what they say is genuinely how they intend to act is beyond my understanding, because I'm not a mind reader. So, but that is what they said, and I don't believe they could so easily go against their word when it comes to something as big as puppeting. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see how the puppeting mechanic is used going forward, but I genuinely don't hope it's used at all. So I don't know. We'll see, but it's in a very interesting position right now.
That's great. That's great. How long have we went on for? That was a good answer, by the way.
We're on for, let's see, on for an hour and a half. So yeah, that's a good place to stop.
A good bite size. Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Yeah, it's been great speaking to you, Valor.
Yep, thank you for coming on, man. And next week we'll get someone new on. Hopefully Hero or Saturn or Tarask or somebody that can, speak for the other side, because we're both anti-Fed. So
we'll try and keep it exciting for you guys, and try not to keep it biased. I've hoped you've enjoyed listening to our perspectives.
Yep, and we'll see you guys next week if you choose to tune in.